Hi everyone, and welcome to the Book Refuge. And today we're doing a spoiler review book chat for Voyager by Gabaldon. Sorry, I have live focus on. Here you go. So as always, we're going to break this into a couple parts. First off, we're going to talk about just real quickly like what the backstory was for me going into this book, like what my feelings were. Then we'll talk about things that I loved, and then we'll talk about the things that I disliked. As always, this was a 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed it. I don't have, really anything bad to say about it. But yeah, let's dive into this. So the backstory for me is I was highly anticipating reading this book. I had drug my feet reading Dragonfly and Amber because of the separation and because of what was, going on with that. But then we get to this one and I know they're going to get back together and then it decides to take forever. But we're going to talk about that. But those were my feelings the first time through this one. And this was also, the biggest one, which for me at the time, which is how I felt, with each subsequent one because they got bigger and bigger and bigger. So the things that I loved in this book. So the beginning of this story, we go back in time again. So where we ended the last book, Claire is told by Roger that he thinks Jamie is still alive, or at least that he escaped from Gabaldon and possibly wasn't murdered, because he finds this line in some documents that one man, a James Fraser of Lovett's line, escaped. And that's all that's written. That's all we know. And that was 20 years before. So technically it's 220 years before, because the times run concurrently, as we found out. So 20 years in the past for them, Jamie was alive. And so Roger asks Claire, would you like me to try to find him? And she says, of course, yes. And so then we get this where we go back and forth as Roger and Brianna and Claire are finding proof of where Jamie has been over the last 20 years. We get to see Jamie experiencing it. So we go back in time to starting with the moments, the hours after Claire has had to leave and the Battle of Culloden is over and everything is shit. That's where we're at. And that leads me to the first thing I really loved about this book is that it was more Jamie's book than Claire's, in my opinion. We spend a lot of time with him, in his head, in his day-to-day life, in the agony and the despair that he went through, especially in the first 10 years. But ultimately, we get to see the hollow half-lives that these two lovers lived for the interim. And now Claire, she had a reason to live. She had Brianna. She was pregnant when she came back. She had a promise to Jamie that she would go back to Frank, that she would make a go of it, and that she would raise his child and not just give up and die. Jamie doesn't have that promise. He doesn't think he'll ever see Claire again. He won't see his child. He's planning to die with his men because he can't travel in time and he has no hope to live. So we see these different sets of circumstances where Jamie is literally, he's not actively looking for death. He is right in the beginning, but he's not actively looking for death, but he just kind of throws his life wherever and he keeps living and he doesn't necessarily want to, but it's happening. And so we see a lot of events happen to Jamie. And we get introduced to some new people. Sorry, I had to bring water for this because you know how long-winded these get. And so through that, we get introduced to Lord John Grey, who we met briefly in the previous book when he was a younger man. He was only 16 at the time. Now he's 23, and he's been made the governor of Ardsmuir Prison, where Jamie ends up for a few years. And Lord John Grey is gay, and he falls in love with Jamie. And now, not only is Jamie, one, not gay, but two, has had a serious, traumatic experience by not a gay man, but a sexual sadist who swings both ways, doesn't care what, you know, gender the person is that he would be fucking. And so there's no hope of that ever going to happen. Besides Jamie not being gay, he also would not even be open to even thinking about it. And so we ourselves understand why someone would fall in love with Jamie, and that if Lord John Grey were to love a man, or who loves men, meets Jamie, why he wouldn't be completely infatuated with this honorable, beautiful, charming man. And we ache for him, even though, like, we don't want Lord John to be with Jamie. We want Jamie to be with Claire, but Diana writes Lord John so personable and so understandable that you just want what's best for him. And so, just a side note quick, Lord John Grey has his own series of, he has a couple books and then novellas that Diana wrote that they take place during Voyager, including one called The Scottish Prisoner, which is about this time in much greater detail, which I do plan to read. That's on my goal list of series to read in 2020. And I really want to spend more time with him. And it wasn't until this reread that I really wanted to do that. Like, in the past, I haven't really cared whether I did or not. And I just love him. He is everything that Blackjack was not. He is fair, he is good, he is loving, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. And you just want your sweet little muffin, your lovely little cinnamon roll to have everything. And it's so great. And he's such an honorable person. He doesn't use his power to abuse, and we love him. So Lord John Grey, amazing. But back to Jamie. What I loved about this book is letting myself revel in the misery this time. And not revel, that's the wrong word. I wasn't enjoying it. But in the same way I felt when I read Dragonfly and Amber, where I never let myself feel it before. I was rushing to get to the end because I just wanted to get through that book because it was going to be painful. I let myself sit in the misery this time and realize how painful and desperate it would be to have given up the love of your life and have no hope of love again, and to have no desire to even breathe without that person. And it hurts, but Diana makes you feel it, and it has this bittersweet of like, better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. That is really how I felt for Jamie and how I felt for Claire. And when Claire has the chance to go back and see Jamie, and knowing that anything could be, like, he could be married to someone else, he could have children, he could be happy, and to risk her heart, to risk her life, to risk her job, to risk never seeing their child again. It's so powerful to me this time, because I'm not like whipped up in their love story the way I was before. I understand the consequences of what they're trying to do. And knowing it all works out, because I've read the whole series, I was able to live in it, which is how I felt about Dragonfly and Amber as well. And in Voyager, instead of building towards them being torn apart, which is what you're living through in Dragonfly and Amber, because you know the end in the beginning, you're living for them being back together because it's going to happen. And I was just able to appreciate Jamie in a way I didn't before, and to live through his pain and the things that motivate him when he doesn't have anything to motivate. And okay, randomly a line from Frozen 2 came through my head, the song that Anna sings that's called The Next Right Thing. And I feel like that could literally be Jamie's theme song during the first half of Voyager. Because there's a line in there that says, how do I rise again when it's not you that I'm rising for? And Jamie is someone who is motivated by love and loyalty and duty. And for him, when he loses love, duty is what keeps him going. And it's duty that saves his life. Like, Lord John Grey's brother takes on a duty that he doesn't even want to, and saves Jamie's life against Jamie's will, because he's a good Catholic man. He would never kill himself. He would never risk heaven. He would never risk getting to be with Claire again to kill himself. He needs someone else to do it, but he won't do it. And he lives. And it's amazing. So I don't know, maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense. So Jamie I loved in this book. I love Lord John Grey. Let's go through it. There's a couple more characters that I want to list that I love. Marcelly and Fergus. We get to see grown-up Fergus. We see Fergus go through losing his hand, which it was laid down in the first one that if he ever lost a hand, that Jamie would take care of him the rest of his life. And seeing little Fergus being like, I'm a man of leisure, none, my lord. Because now Jamie will take care of him the rest of his life, and he knows that he will. And later on in the second half, we get to meet Marcelly, who is only 15, and Fergus is 30, but she decides that she wants Fergus, and she will have him. And I love it. It still doesn't weird me out, because it's the time period, and it's the woman. Like, she is a grown woman for her circumstances and for the things she's had to live with. And she tells her dad, she's like, why do I need to wait 10 more years? Why do I need to wait 5 more years when I know that I want him now? Why can't I marry him now instead of us waiting, and he could die tomorrow, and then, you know, like, whatever. And, you know, all the objections people come up with, Marcelly is like, I'm doing it. And Claire, who, you know, her and Marcelly don't get along in the beginning because obviously Marcelly is Leary's daughter, who Jamie married out of pity, basically. And well, we're going to get into that. Sorry, I'll stop rushing ahead. But I love Marcelly, and she's she's really strongly a side character for the rest of the series. We don't spend a ton of time with her and Fergus, but she's always there, and she's always strong, and she's an amazing mother, and she's a frontierswoman, and I love her so much. So yeah, I just love getting to meet her. I love young Ian. Young Ian is in my top 5 Outlander characters. And this is the book where we get to meet him. We get to see him be born, and we get to see him when he's 15, and then we lose him because he gets kidnapped by pirates. And it's horrible. But the time we get introduced to him, we immediately love him. He reminds us so much of Jamie. He is Jenny and Ian's youngest son. He's their baby, and he is rebelling against it so hard. He's just fighting against it. He's causing problems, and Jamie sees so much of himself in him, and he wants to take care of him, and he's his godfather and his uncle, and he's going to do what he can for him, and I love it so much. How do you guys feel about young Ian? He's my favorite. He's my favorite. He's so great. I'm reading Drums of Autumn right now, and we get to spend even more time with him, and I love it. And then just a couple more things. So the next thing I love is I love the romance in this book, and I love being shown what is and isn't romance and what is and isn't love, as we get to see through the character of Geneva, and we get to see through Frank, and we get to see through the eyes of these things of like what is love and what is possession and what is just sex and what is honest connection. And these are all different themes and things that we explore, and it all pales in comparison to when Jamie and Claire are together again and they have their second wedding night. And just the reconnection of knowing someone so well but not knowing them at all, and of sharing a soul with someone and having been away from them for 20 years. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, the romance is amazing. We get to see more of Bree and Roger as they start to feel each other out, and we get to talk with Bree about what this means. She's helping her mother find, well, her father, but someone she's never met, and knowing that she won't probably see her mother ever again. And just the courage that is in Bree to do that and to accept what her mother has said about Frank, the only dad she's ever known, and who loved her. He was a good father. For all of Frank's faults and all the things that make you want to stab him in the eye and call him a bastard and all these things, he was a great father. That is the only ground I'll give him. It's the only nice thing I'll say about Frank. And we'll talk about him when we do the TV show review of this. But he was a great dad. And so for Bree to realize that her mom hasn't loved her father in almost their entire marriage, that's a hard thing to take. And to be helping your mom find the love of her life and leave you, that takes a lot for this 20-year-old woman to do. And I really like Bree. She's a hard biscuit to bite into in the beginning because we're seeing her at her worst. Like, this is traumatic stuff, and we don't get to see her grow yet. We just see her, all this information dumped on her. It takes them a couple months to find Jamie, and then her mother will be leaving her. Like, as soon as they find out where Jamie is, she knows she's going to send her mom. And she knows her mom would stay for her. And so all this weight is on top of her. The knowledge that Frank's not really her father. The knowledge that her mom can travel in time. The knowledge that when they find Jamie, her mother will leave her. Or she could make her mother stay. So there's all these layers on top of Bree. And I love her. I love that she makes this decision and it hurts. Like, she's basically like her mom is dead now. But she's brave and she knows that she's giving her mother true happiness again. And she'll see that payoff someday, but it's not right now. And I don't know if I could do it to lose a parent that way. So I love Bree and I love Roger. Love Roger so much. Okay. All right. That's enough. I'm going to get into the few things I didn't like and then we'll move along. So the number one thing I don't like, and this is a pretty general thing, is that I don't like the plot after the reunion. So I believe, and if you've done any like research into this series, or you've read The Outlandish Companion, or you've listened to some interviews by Diana, you know that when she wrote this series, well, number one, it was first just Outlander. And then they asked her, hey, can you write some more? And she's like, I could write at least 2 more of these. And when she was writing those, she realized that she needed to kind of wrap up the beginning. And then she had a whole nother story to tell in America, which the last page of Voyager is them landing in Georgia and they're in America, and the rest of this story starts. But there's a very distinct part of the book where the story we've been told up until this point is done, like it concludes. And that is Outlander, Dragonfly and Amber, and Voyager up until they reconnect, which is, I put a thing in there, which is right here in the book. So only about a third of the way into it, we complete that original story. And then we discover what we're going to be dealing with for the rest of the other 10 books that she's going to write, you know, the rest of the 7 books she's going to write. And in this book, I'm not a fan of what the plot is for the rest of it. There are lots of good things within there, but the general through line having to do with the gems, the freaking treasure that gets mentioned in every single book from now on, I hate that plot thread. I hate it so much because I just don't care about those gemstones. I just don't give a flying frick about it. And it comes up all the time, and it's a major driver for everything that happens, and I'm not a fan of it. I wish that Ian had, which he does get taken just for a random reason, because he's on that place at the wrong time, and Galis likes to kill virgins to keep herself young, apparently, which isn't even working because she's like fat, old, and balding when we run into her again, so I'm like, I don't know. And I don't like that Galis is still alive. I really don't like the trope of not dead, and particularly with Galis, who is supposed to have been burned alive. I'm not a big fan of her still being alive, and of her still trying to save, like, Bonnie Prince Charlie, like, still trying to fix that and everything. I'm just not a fan of it. I think we get a lot of interesting things from it because young Ian gets sexually assaulted, and him and Jamie are able to have some conversations about that. And there's a really powerful one that you know Jamie struggled with, because he was assaulted and he's lived with it for 22 years. He still remembers being assaulted and still has nightmares sometimes and still hates Blackjack on some days, even though he killed Blackjack. He got to end him and end that suffering. And, you know, Gayless, with boys, like, literally there's the question he asked, like, I was having sex with her, but I didn't want to, but she made me. And that is a thing that, you know, a lot of men feel, is that how can a man be raped? Because if he doesn't want it, it wouldn't happen. And, okay. And, I mean, that's something women struggle with, too. That's not just, nope. Yeah, so he said, Uncle, have you ever lain with a woman and you didn't want to? And Jamie says, yes, Ian, I have. And he says, but Uncle, do you understand how you can do it but not want to do it, and you hate doing it, but it still feels good? And Jamie says this very powerful line. Jamie says, well, it comes to this, Ian, is that your cock hasn't got a conscience, but you have. And for a line that, you know, it makes people chuckle sometimes or whatever, I think it's really powerful for men to hear that, and especially men who've been assaulted or, you know, treated in the way Ian or Jamie was, is that you can still not be in control and your body can respond. And that happens to women too. There are some rapists who want a woman to like it, and just because your body can get aroused, it doesn't mean that you aren't being assaulted. And I just love how Diana is able to put in those very powerful moments, and in the middle of everything else, it just hits you that there's some very important, like, healing that can be taken from this. So I really like that. But we were talking about things I didn't like. But the thing I didn't like is Gayless. I hate that she's still around. I hate her whole plot with her and her plantation, and I really don't like it as the climax of the story. And that's something for me that happens actually in quite a few of these books, is that they don't have terribly great rising and falling action. Like, really, especially from Drums of Autumn all the way through, there's really only one of those books, I would say Snow Like Ashes, that have great, like, plot through the whole thing. They're really more of the entire thing is like a saga of stories, and we get little mini things happening throughout it, which I love, but I can see why that would be hard for some people, and I can see why it's hard when they make the TV show, because her books are more like, there's plots that get set up way back in Dragonfly and Amber that won't get solved until an Echo of the Bone, you know? And so I understand how that can be difficult, but I'm not a huge fan of the plot there. Willoughby, we're not going to talk about him because I want to stay out of, like, getting all, like, racist and stuff. But Diana, this has been brought up so many times already. Like, she wrote a very, like, racially stereotypical character, and it was supposed to be that way. Also, this was 97 or 90. Yeah, this was 93 when this book got made. So there's some leverage there, but in general, I skipped almost everything that had to do with Willoughby because I was just like, nope, I'm not gonna read this again. I know what the point of this character is. I don't agree with it. I don't think he was necessary, and I just don't like it. And they make him not really great at all. Like, the TV show, we'll talk about that. That's something I like that they improve upon, in my opinion, but no. Do not like Willoughby. Moving along. And then the Fiend, the Edinburgh Fiend who's killing women. It's very convenient to me that it's happening in, like, literally, it's happening in Edinburgh, whatever. I'm sorry that I'm freaking up these names. And it ends in Hispaniola. And that same person who's doing that ends up all the way over here in the same place that Jamie and Claire, now killing women in Hispaniola. And that's just way too plot convenient, even for me. So, all right. I think we've gone on enough, and also the plow is making me want to shoot myself in the head. great. I'm not redoing any of this footage, so I'm sorry, you'll have to listen to that. But those are my main feelings about Voyager by Diana Gabaldon. This is still, of course, a 5-star read for me. I love her books so much. I loved reading this so much. I can't wait to finish reading Drums of Autumn. I will have the comparison to the 3rd season of Outlander goes up in 2 weeks after this one. And if you'd like to check out the content, the rest of the Outlander content I've done, you can check out the playlist up here, which has my reasons you should read Outlander, an Outlander spoiler review, a Dragonfly and Amber spoiler review, and then the seasons of the TV show. We just have about a month until season 5 comes out, where I will be doing episode reactions for all of season 5. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you subscribe. Please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps me out. I appreciate it so much. And I put up new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. You can watch some more of them now. I'm sorry about the plow. Fuck that guy.